Exercise L9. Predicting the topic. 1.
The United Kingdom is made up of 4 countries: England, Northern Ireland, Scotland, and, Wales.
2.
Architects from around the world vote for one architect, the one architect they believe should receive the award for architecture.
3.
Let me show you samples of Irish linen to help you get, a better idea of the various patterns.
4.
There are a number of human and animal-shaped figures carved in hillsides around the world.
5.
I attended Professor Brown's talk on the geology of Mars last night.
Exercise L10. Identifying the topic from the first statement. 1.
The practice of acupuncture began in China about 5,000 years ago.
2.
Muscles are made of lots of, many fine fibers about 25 millimeters long.
3.
A whole new world of opportunities and challenges in education has been opened up by radio. I mean satellite. Satellite communications technology has opened up lots of possibilities and challenges in education.
4.
We will be concentrating specifically on the golden age of Spanish literature in this seminar and the historical setting in which the literature flourished.
5.
Although some of the signs and symptoms of the common cold are similar to those of influenza, influenza is a highly contagious and potentially life-threatening disease.
6.
Lack of animal protein in the human diet is a serious cause of malnutrition in many parts of the world.
Exercise L11. Determining if the topic is stated in the first sentence. 1.
We have given the name magic square to a square-shaped arrangement of numbers, in which the numbers are arranged so that the groups of numbers all add up to the same figure. In other words, if you were to add the horizontal numbers, you would come up with the same answer as you do when you add the numbers vertically or diagonally. Now, the largest magic square ever devised has the amazing number, anyway, in my opinion, amazing. The number of boxes is 578,865.
2.
The wealthy have kept their own private collections of animals for thousands of years. The first public zoo, however, was not opened until 1793. That was the zoo at the Jardin des Plantes in Paris. Zoos have not only protected endangered species, but they also allow people to see exotic animals without having to travel to distant countries.
Three.
In the mid-1800s, the overland mail stagecoach carried the mail across the American continent. But, because the service was unsatisfactory, kind of slow and not reliable, a freighting firm established a new service called the Pony Express. I'm sure most of you have heard of the Pony Express. The way the Pony Express worked was by use of a relay system. So these daring young riders made weekly treks on horseback across the rough and dangerous terrain between St. Joseph, Missouri and Sacramento, California. Although it was very successful, the Pony Express was short-lived. That was because after only 16 months of being in service, the telegraph came into use. Basically, the telegraph put the Pony Express out of business.
Four.
Penang, Malaysia is the home of the world's largest butterfly farm. This farm is both a sanctuary and breeding center for something like about 2,000 recorded species of Malaysian butterflies. Butterflies which are being driven away from populated areas by pollution and industrialization. So the studies being conducted on the farm are studies into tropical butterflies' habitats, diseases that attack caterpillars, and pest control. Also, research is being done on how the ecological balance would be affected if foreign butterflies were to be imported and bred on the farm.
Five.
Did you enjoy the architecture excursion to St. Martin's Cathedral?
Yes, very much, Professor. And we really appreciate your arranging everything for us.
Thank you. Was there anything special that impressed you?
I especially like the gargoyles. But I was wondering, why did stoneworkers put those grotesque heads on cathedrals anyway? To frighten away bad spirits or what?
No, not at all. Nothing like that. They're designed to catch the water that runs off the roof when it rains or when the snow melts.
Oh, I see. That makes sense. The water collects in the gargoyle's mouth, and the gargoyle kind of like spits the water out onto the street.
That's right. That protects the walls from moisture that would otherwise drip down and cause erosion.
Exercise L12. Identifying a change in topic. 1.
Folk dances. The steps and movements of the folk dances have been passed on from one dancer to another over the years. The movements weren't written down. Since this system is not always very accurate, choreographers had to invent ways of writing down the movements. So at first, they drew little pictures under the music. Then later, they came up with a system that uses dots on lines. These dots represent hands, feet, and heads.
Two.
It was during his search for a new route to India that Columbus reached America. You may find it surprising that even though he made his discovery in 1492, it took a little over 100 years for people to finally settle in the New World. Yeah, so why did they decide to come? Well, some settlers were hoping to escape the problems of the Old World by, moving to the New. Then there were reports that excellent crops could be produced, in Virginia especially. Well, that induced more people to undertake such a long journey across the ocean. So, America was not the sought-after India, but it did offer its settlers a new and potentially rich life.
Three.
It used to be widely accepted that photographs provided a perfect way to document historical events. It seemed that a photographic image preserved in extraordinary detail deeds of both the famous people and of the unknown masses. But this is no longer the case, or at least not the case with contemporary photographs, because technological advances in the field of photography in recent years have made it possible to manipulate and alter photographic images, a process you all know as digital imaging. So, digital imaging, as fun as it might be, or as useful in some fields that it might be, has in fact made it increasingly difficult, well, impractical really, to use contemporary photographs as a reliable source of information. We can't conclude anymore that photographic records, for those interested in the historical records, can be used for any serious inquiry. You have to take contents of a contemporary photograph with a grain of salt, so to speak.
Four.
You hear snatches of Spanish, French, Russian, Chinese, and a dozen other languages which you probably don't recognize on the streets of major cities in America, right? Okay, even though all kinds of languages are heard, the vast majority of people living in the United States communicate in English. So the United States is considered an English-speaking country. But is English the official language in the U.S.?
Well, sure. All the official stuff, the discussions in the Congress, the official documents, that's all in English.
Can you tell me where in the United States Constitution it says that English is the official language?
No. But maybe it isn't in the Constitution. Maybe it's in a different document.
Well, the fact is that no single language is recognized as an official language in the United States Constitution. Now, having said that there's no official language that's stated at the federal level, don't forget that there are also state constitutions.
Ah, okay.
However, like the U.S. Constitution, most state constitutions don't recognize an official language either. Does anyone know of any state constitutions that do recognize an official language?
Well, I'm from Louisiana, and I think that the Louisiana State Constitution recognizes both English and French as official languages.
Okay. The state of Nebraska made English its official language sometime early in the 20th century, and from time to time, this issue pops up and is discussed in various states.
Listening Mini Test 1. Questions 1 through 3. Listen to part of a discussion between two friends.
Hey, Sammy. How's your job at the library working out? You're at the university library, aren't you?
Yeah, it's great. I've been working in the acquisitions department.
Oh, what do you do there?
Logging in new books, mostly. It's kind of neat because I get to open all the boxes that arrive. Boxes containing all the newly purchased books. It's kind of like a birthday, unwrapping presents.
That sounds like fun.
That part is, but then I have to enter each book into the computer. I don't mind that too much, but the worst thing is attaching the barcode on the cover. That can get kind of tedious, just doing the same thing over and over again.
1. What are the people discussing? Two. What is the woman referring to when she states, "That sounds like fun"? 3. Which duty does the man like the least? Questions 4 through 6. Listen to part of a lecture from a history class.
William Cody. Well, you probably know him as Buffalo Bill. Okay, so William Cody became an American showman and founded the Great Wild West Show. That was in 1883. He traveled around Europe with other famous people that you probably have also heard of, like people such as the sharpshooter Annie Oakley and the Indian chief Sitting Bull. This Wild West show traveled, as I said, around Europe and performed for many heads of state like the Queen of England. Queen Victoria, the show was featured at her Golden Jubilee celebrations, and the Tsar of Russia. That would have been the Tsar, Alexander III. His father, Alexander II, had been assassinated in 1881, so Alexander III would have seen Cody's show.
4. What is the talk mainly about? Five. What is the woman referring to when she states, "That was in 1883"? 6. In addition to Annie Oakley, which other famous person traveled with Buffalo Bill? Questions 7 through 9. Listen to part of a lecture from a music class.
Just before the turn of the 20th century, a new musical form captivated America, and that was ragtime. I suspect you've all heard of ragtime. The main feature of ragtime is its syncopation. Syncopation. You know how a waltz has a beat of 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and a polka has 1, 2, 3, 4. These beats are regular, but in ragtime there's syncopation, a displaced beat or accent. Traditional strong beats become weak, and vice versa. Weak becomes strong. Or the beat isn't evenly spaced, but comes a little earlier than expected, or later. Although ragtime had its start in 1897 with William Krell's Mississippi Rag, and I'm going to be playing that for you in a moment, it was Scott Joplin who popularized the rag with his Maple Leaf Rag. We'll hear that one as well. Now, it was John Philip Sousa, best known for marches actually, who began to feature rags in his band concerts in America and Europe. And by the early 1900s, ragtime was the most popular musical art form in America. Okay? Now let's listen to... I'd like to play a few of these pieces I've been telling you about.
7. What does the speaker mainly discuss? Eight. According to the professor, what is ragtime? 9. What does the professor contrast in his lecture? Questions 10 through 12. Listen to a conversation between two students.
Did you hear on the news last night that the City Museum had just recovered the missing painting by Rembrandt? They said, let me get this right. The curator said the painting had been returned after being out on unauthorized loan for 3 years.
Yeah, I heard that, but I just got in on the tail end of the story. The part I saw when I was watching it, I kept wondering, why that painting? What's so special, about that particular painting? I mean, there are so many more valuable items in the museum. Why was that one stolen?
Yeah, well, they explained that on the news. That same Rembrandt's been stolen 4 times in the last 20 years. Thieves seem to favor it, and the museum curator believes it may have something to do with its size. You know, it's kind of small, 9 inches by 11.
That would make it easy to take. Just put it under your coat and walk out.
Don't get any ideas. Well, they do have surveillance cameras.
I'd say they need something more.
The museum has taken extra security precautions.
How valuable is it, anyway? Did they say?
Yeah, well, the curator said that it's been appraised at $5 million, but he didn't know what a thief could get for it.
That Rembrandt's very well known, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
So why would anyone want a stolen painting that's so easily recognized?
The news reporter asked that same question, and the curator wasn't sure. But he told a story about the Mona Lisa being stolen, and a man painted a bunch of copies and then sold all the fakes as the real stolen one.
10. What are the people discussing? (11) What does the woman mean by the phrase, being out on unauthorized loan for 3 years?